Every week, you are buying ginger at the grocery store. A small knobby piece wrapped in plastic for $3 to $5 that was grown on the other side of the world, harvested months ago, shipped across an ocean, stored in a distribution center, and sitting on a shelf under fluorescent lights before it reached your hand. That ginger has been traveling longer than most houseplants have been alive. Here is what the grocery store is not telling you. That same piece of ginger you just paid $4 for is also a seed. Plant it in the right container with the right setup, and it produces pounds of fresh ginger from your own porch, your own balcony, your own kitchen windowsill. The flavor difference between store-bought ginger that has been traveling for months and ginger you harvest and use within the hour is not subtle. It is dramatic. And once you grow your own, you will never go back to the plastic-wrapped version again. Today, I am giving you 5 secrets that the gardening world largely ignores about growing ginger in containers. Secret number 3 is the one that separates gardeners who get a modest harvest from gardeners who get more ginger than they can use in an entire season. Drop your US state or USDA zone in the comments right now. Ginger growing strategy changes significantly depending on your climate. And I want to make sure everything I tell you today actually applies where you are growing. I read every single one. Let's go. Secret 1. The piece you start with determines everything about your harvest size. And most people start too small. Walk into any grocery store in America and buy ginger. That piece in your hand is not just food. It is a rhizome, a modified underground stem that the ginger plant uses to store energy and spread horizontally through the soil. Every bump and nodule on that rhizome surface is a potential growing point. Every growing point produces a shoot above ground and a root system below it. More growing points means more shoots. More shoots means more photosynthesis. More photosynthesis means more energy flowing into the rhizome system. More energy in the rhizome system means more ginger at harvest time. This is the math most gardening content never explains. The size of the rhizome piece you plant at the beginning of the season directly determines the size of the harvest you pull out at the end of it. A small single-node piece produces a small plant with a modest harvest. A large multi-node piece with 5 or 6 visible growing points produces a plant with multiple stems, a large canopy, a vigorous root system, and a harvest that fills a bowl rather than a corner of a bag. When you are standing at the grocery store choosing your planting piece, look for the largest, most irregular, most multi-knotted chunk you can find. Look specifically for pieces where the growing points, the small lighter colored nodules at the tips of each section, are already slightly swollen, or showing the faintest green tinge. Those are the pieces already waking up. Those are the ones that will sprint out of the soil fastest when you plant them. One additional technique that most container ginger growers never use. Pre-sprout your rhizome before planting. Place the piece in a shallow container of room temperature water for 24 to 48 hours before planting. You will see the growing points begin to swell visibly. Plant immediately after pre-sprouting. That head start compresses your time from planting to first visible shoots by 1 to 2 weeks, which matters enormously if you are in a zone with a shorter, warm season. Tell me in the comments right now, have you ever tried growing ginger from a grocery store piece? Drop your state and tell me what happened. I read every single one. Secret 2. Ginger grows sideways, not downward. And the wrong container shape cuts your harvest in half. Every standard container gardening guide tells you to choose a deep pot for root crops. For ginger, that advice is wrong, and following it is costing you harvest volume every single season. Ginger rhizomes expand horizontally. They travel outward in every direction from the original planting piece just below the soil surface. They do not go down. They go sideways. A deep, narrow container gives ginger vertical space it will never use and restricts the horizontal space it needs to expand. The rhizome hits the container wall, runs out of room, and stops expanding. Your harvest is limited by the shape of the container, rather than the energy of the plant. The correct container for ginger is wide and shallow, minimum 16 inches in diameter, 8 to 12 inches deep. That wide, shallow shape matches exactly how ginger grows. Horizontal expansion in every direction from the center outward. In a correctly sized, wide, shallow container, a single starting rhizome piece expands outward into a full, dense mat of rhizome by the end of the season. In a deep, narrow container, that same piece runs out of room before it reaches its potential. Fabric grow bags are one of the best container options for ginger specifically. The wide, shallow rectangular fabric grow bags, sold at most garden centers and online, provide exactly the horizontal expansion space ginger needs. The breathable fabric also prevents the overwatering issues that kill more container ginger than any other cause. Water drains freely through the fabric walls as well as the bottom. The root zone stays consistently moist without ever becoming waterlogged. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. This channel puts out real zone-specific money-saving food growing content every single week. Free. 2 seconds. Do it now. Secret 3. Hilling up the soil mid-season triples your harvest. Almost nobody does this. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning, the one that separates a modest ginger harvest from an abundant one, and it requires almost no effort. One action mid-season that takes 10 minutes and multiplies your harvest volume significantly. Here is the biology behind it. Ginger rhizomes form and expand just below the soil surface. As the season progresses and the plant grows, the rhizomes near the container edges begin approaching the soil surface. When a rhizome tip breaks through the soil surface and is exposed to light and air, it stops expanding. It has hit a boundary. The growing energy redirects back into the existing root mass, rather than continuing to expand the harvest. Hilling, adding additional potting mix over the top of the container mid-season to bury the expanding rhizome tips, removes that boundary. When you cover the exposed or near-surface rhizome tips with 2 to 3 inches of fresh potting mix, those tips continue expanding into the new soil above them. The harvest zone extends upward into the fresh soil. The total rhizome mass at harvest is significantly larger than it would have been without hilling. In commercial ginger production, hilling is standard practice. Farmers hill their ginger beds at 45 days after planting and again at 90 days. 2 hillings per season at those intervals produce substantially larger harvests than non-hilled plants in identical conditions. You can replicate this in a container with a single bag of potting mix and 10 minutes of work per container per hilling. Here is exactly how to do it. At approximately 6 weeks after your first shoots emerge, look at the soil surface around your ginger plant. You will see the rhizome tips beginning to push at or near the surface. Add 2 to 3 inches of fresh potting mix evenly across the entire container surface, covering those tips completely. Water it in, leave it. At 12 weeks, repeat the process. 2 hillings, 20 minutes of total work across the entire season. The harvest difference is not marginal, it is dramatic. Hit the like button right now. Every tells YouTube this content is worth showing to gardeners across America who are getting a fraction of the ginger harvest they could be producing from the same container. 1 tap. Secret 4. Ginger is a tropical plant being grown in a temperate climate, and matching its temperature requirements changes everything. Ginger evolved in Southeast Asia, tropical conditions, consistent warmth, high humidity, moist soil that never fully dries out. When you grow it in a container in an American garden, you are asking a tropical plant to perform in conditions that may be significantly different from what it evolved for. Understanding that gap and closing it is what separates gardeners who struggle with ginger from those who get abundant, consistent harvests. Soil temperature matters more than air temperature for ginger establishment. Ginger rhizomes will not break dormancy and begin sending out roots and shoots until soil temperature consistently exceeds 55 degrees Fahrenheit. At soil temperatures below 50 degrees, a planted rhizome sits dormant, sometimes for weeks, before any visible progress occurs. At soil temperatures between 70 and 85 degrees, ginger grows with remarkable speed. Use dark-colored containers for ginger in zones 5 through 7. Dark containers absorb solar heat and raise soil temperature meaningfully compared to light containers in the same position. That warmer root zone accelerates establishment, extends the effective growing season at both ends, and produces a more vigorous plant throughout the season. In zones 8 through 10, where summer heat is already intense, use light-colored containers to prevent root zone overheating. Start ginger indoors if you are in USDA, zones 5 through 7. Plant your pre-sprouted rhizome in its container 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. Keep it in the warmest, brightest indoor location available, a south-facing window or under grow lights. Move it outside after your last frost date when soil temperatures are consistently above 60 degrees. That indoor head start gives your ginger 6 additional weeks of growth before the outdoor season begins and meaningfully increases your harvest volume at the end of the season. Mulch the container surface once your plants are established. 2 inches of straw or wood chip mulch applied to the container surface retains soil moisture through the warm, dry periods of midsummer, reducing the watering frequency you need to maintain and keeping the root zone in the consistently moist condition ginger evolved for. In hot, dry climates, this single step is the difference between a ginger plant that thrives all season and one that struggles through August. Subscribe right now if you have not already. Hit the bell. Every week, this channel puts out practical, zone-specific, money-saving food-growing content. The next video is already coming. Make sure it finds you. Secret 5. You do not have to wait until fall to harvest, and partial harvesting makes the remaining plant more productive. Most container ginger guides tell you to wait until the plant dies back in fall to harvest. That is the conservative answer. It is not the only answer. And for gardeners in colder zones where fall comes early, it is often not even the practical answer. Here is what most gardening content never tells you about ginger harvesting. You can harvest pieces of the rhizome mid-season without destroying the plant. This technique, called snap harvesting or partial harvesting, involves reaching into the soil at the edge of the container and breaking off outer rhizome sections that have developed to usable size while leaving the central root mass and growing shoots intact. Snap harvesting works because ginger rhizomes expand outward from the center. The outermost sections, the most recently developed pieces at the edges of the expanding rhizome mat, are structurally separate enough from the main mass that they can be removed cleanly without disturbing the central growing system. The plant responds to partial harvesting by redirecting growing energy into the remaining root mass, often producing new rhizome growth to replace what was removed. In zones where ginger can be grown year-round, zones 9 through 11, snap harvesting allows continuous fresh ginger production from a single container across multiple seasons without ever fully clearing and replanting the container. The plant cycles through continuous expansion and partial harvest indefinitely in a warm climate. For gardeners in zones 5 through 8, where the first frost ends the growing season, the timing decision is straightforward. When nighttime temperatures consistently drop below 50 degrees, the plant begins declining. At that point, harvest everything. Clear the entire container. Wash the rhizomes. Use what you need immediately. Fresh, homegrown ginger has a flavor intensity that no store-bought version approaches. Store the remainder in a cool, dry location or in the refrigerator for up to 3 months. Set aside the largest, best-looking pieces with visible growing points to replant the following spring. Your one original grocery store purchase becomes a self-renewing ginger production system that never needs replacing. Dry harvested ginger for long-term storage. Slice it uniformly thin. Consistent thickness ensures even drying. Dehydrate at 115 degrees for 3 to 4 hours until completely crisp. The dried pieces snap cleanly when bent. That snap is the signal they are ready. Grind in a spice grinder. The ginger powder you produce from your own container harvest is more aromatic, more flavorful, and more potent than anything in a jar on a grocery store spice rack. The difference is measurable. The cost is almost zero. Here is everything in one place before you buy your first piece. Start with the largest, most multi-knotted grocery store rhizome you can find. Pre-sprout it for 24 to 48 hours in room temperature water before planting. Choose a wide, shallow container. Minimum 16 inches diameter. 8 to 12 inches deep. Fabric grow bags are ideal. Use high-quality, rich organic potting mix. Ginger is a heavy feeder that needs organic matter to produce at its full potential. Start indoors in zones 5 through 7, 4 to 6 weeks before last frost. Move outside when soil temperatures consistently exceed 60 degrees. Hill with 2 to 3 inches of fresh potting mix at 6 weeks, and again at 12 weeks after emergence. That one technique triples your harvest volume. Mulch the container surface with 2 inches of straw or wood chips to maintain consistent moisture through the season. Harvest partially throughout the season if you want fresh ginger continuously. Clear the entire container before first frost. Store, use, and replant the best pieces next spring. That is the complete system. One grocery store purchase, one correctly sized container. 5 secrets nobody told you. A year's worth of fresh ginger from your own porch. Drop two things in the comments before you go. What state or zone are you gardening in? And are you going to try growing ginger this season for the first time? Or have you grown it before? I read every single comment. Your answers shape the next video directly. Now go find the best piece of ginger at your grocery store. You are not buying food, you are buying a seed.